Hello and welcome to a new lesson here on HelloSaxophone.com. My name is Florian, and in this lesson I'm going to talk about the 10 things that I believe hold back most beginning saxophone players. Now these 10 are in no particular order, they're all equally important, so don't worry about that, and let's get started with number 1. Being scared of your instrument. The first thing I want to talk about is being scared of your instrument. Now that may sound a little bit strange, but what I've noticed working with a lot of different students from various places is that there's one theme that's very, very common with beginning saxophone players, and that is that, especially with people that learn to play an instrument at a young age, so maybe it wasn't you learning the saxophone, but maybe you played piano before or some other instrument when you were little, an experience that happens there is that with little kids playing with expensive instruments, no matter what it is, usually your parents will have had a good time warning you for being very careful with the instrument. And I find that almost anybody who has learned to play an instrument when they were little, they kind of developed a unhealthy carefulness, something that's almost a fear of the instrument. So they're kind of afraid to touch instruments, to just play with them, to see them as fun objects, because they've had this experience of the parents telling them when they were just a little very impressionable kid, like, be very careful with this instrument, don't drop it, hold it carefully, all those type of very sensible thing, of course, for a parent to tell a kid. But the result somehow is that people get an unhealthy amount of too much respect for the instrument and become too careful, and that really holds people back, because I think it's very, very important that you see your instrument, your saxophone, as something that's fun, something that's great to just touch. And of course you want to have a healthy respect for your instrument, but you don't want to be scared of your instrument. You don't want to have too much respect for the instrument that way. That brings us to number 2, which is understanding your instrument.
Interesting.
Most beginners, I find, don't really take the time through various circumstances to really understand the instrument. And this has a lot to do with classical teachers. Many teachers kind of skip over the part where they really explain how an instrument works and show you, like, how does it produce sound, where does the sound come from, why was it designed the way it is designed, all these things that are really, really important to know, because once you understand your instrument, really how it works, you eliminate a whole lot of problems. And many beginners that I know, send me messages like, yeah, I'm getting some weird sound when I'm playing, or I think something may be broken with my saxophone and I don't know what's going on. And most of the time, all I do to help them with this is to just tell them how the instrument works, how it produces sound. And as soon as you understand that, and you can watch this video, by the way, if you want to know all the details. Once you understand how the instrument works, how it produces sound, it's very easy to locate problems. If a spring is broken, or maybe one of your tone holes is leaking, it's very easy to at least find the problem. And many little problems, like a spring that's lost some tension, you can easily fix yourself. And if there's a bigger problem, you can go to your repairman and just say, hey, this particular thing is broken, can you fix it? And then it's usually pretty cheap. And you have some power for yourself, you know what's going on. But so many beginners skip over the step of really getting to know the saxophone, and then when something doesn't work or something sounds strange, they have to stop. They can't play on. They have to go to a repairman first, have them repair it, or they have to keep playing with the saxophone where they have no idea what's going on. Now that brings us to number 3, and this is really a big one. And that's this. Most beginners believe, for reasons unknown, I guess it's logical to think it, but still, they seem to think that playing the saxophone and reading music, being able to read music off the sheet, go hand in hand. So that learning to play the saxophone has to be linked to how fast you learn how to read music. And that is absolutely not true. You can learn to play the saxophone pretty fast using your ears and your hands and just, goofing off and playing around. You can get a pretty good understanding and a pretty good hand technique pretty fast. Learning to read music and play off the sheet generally takes a year or 2 years to slowly get good at. And when you combine the two, what many students and also many classical teachers, and I don't mean classical music teacher, but classical sort of style saxophone teachers do is, all they will do is have their students play off the sheet and maybe a little free things, but most of it is playing off the sheet, playing off the sheet, playing off the sheet, reading and playing, reading and playing. And of course that's great, it's a good way to learn, but you want to spend a lot of time also away from reading anything and just playing. Really like singing under the shower, but singing through your saxophone and just singing whatever comes up, whatever little tune you come up with, or playing along with the radio, or doing other things besides reading and playing. Because if you link your technical capacity, your development of just playing the saxophone with no reading involved at all, it'll go much faster than if you link those two. Because then your ability to learn to read music will hold you back on the saxophone a lot. Because actually many people, especially the more musical people, can learn to play, little songs. That's why I work with a lot of finger charts in my videos. Can learn to play in minutes. In an hour they can learn by head to play a little song. It's really not that difficult, and you can learn hundreds of songs that way before you can ever read a note. Now, I'm not negating reading. Reading is very important. It's a great way to open yourself up to a lot of other music and to play new songs with people. But it's about learning to play the saxophone mostly. So don't link those things in your mind. And that brings us to number 4, and that is playing alone for far too long.
I'm real lonely, I just want to shake your hand. Will you shake my hand? Maybe later.
Many students are scared to play with other people, and that's natural because you don't really understand or master the instrument at all. It takes some time, but still it's very important to play with other people, because if you don't, you sort of isolate yourself from this whole nother path of evolution, of getting better fast. Now for me personally, for example, when I got my saxophone, about 3 weeks after, now I was practicing really hard, like 1-2 hours a day, every day for 3 weeks, and then I found this local free improvisation workshop, and I just went there. And actually when I first got on stage and played this little melody that I had practiced for a few days, the guy who was leading the workshop actually told me, like, yeah, your song is nice, but you really don't master the instrument yet, and well, I don't know if you're ready for this workshop. And he was probably right. But I just told him, well, I can play a few notes. I mean, teach me something with that. I just want to play with other people. I want to experience this. And he kind of laughed and said, well, okay, sure, I can teach you this. And we tried. And from that, I made a really nice friendship with this guy over time. But I also learned a ton. And it really helped me bridge the gap between playing alone and playing with other people. And from that workshop I went into little bands, and some people invited me to some jam sessions in their garage, and pretty soon you're playing with a lot of people. And well, I believe it was Sonny Rollins, one of the absolute masters of the tenor saxophone, who said that playing with other people for an hour, in a band, whether it's on a stage or in a garage or wherever, for an hour is worth like 4 weeks of playing alone. And I really believe that's true. And many beginners wait for far too long and are scared. And it's natural to be a little nervous when playing with other people. You want to do good, you don't want to mess up other people's music. But get out there as soon as you can. Even if you feel uncomfortable, I would say if you're playing for 3, 4, 5 weeks, that's enough. If you're serious about practicing, put an ad on some local music forums, or find some local music events or workshops that you can join, and just be friendly to people, be open about the fact that you've just started, and go in there, play with other people, and you'll find that this will just boost the speed of your development and how fast you can get better on the saxophone enormously. That brings us to number 5, getting very obsessed with technical things.
I want it all. I want it all.
This is something that a trap that I myself also fell into a little bit at the start, and that's that as a beginner we are all too aware of the fact that for the first year and a half you're just not gonna sound really great. The saxophone just isn't an instrument like, for example, the piano, where it doesn't matter who presses the key, it always sounds beautiful if the piano is beautiful. No, a saxophone you really have to make work. And for the first year and a half, there's just a huge, learning curve and evolution curve until you get to the point where other people will start saying, wow, you sound really nice, you're really starting to sound okay now. So, that's just something that we all have to get over. But something that happens to a lot of beginners is that instead of just kind of being honest to ourselves and saying, this is going to take some time, we say, well, if I get that really expensive mouthpiece, or if I get a really expensive saxophone, or if I get, this other type of reeds, or this other type of ligature, or, whatever it happens to be. And we tend to just go, especially if you got the money, into this over obsession with tuning your setup really well and getting this amazing instrument that, to be honest, we can't really work yet. It's like trying to learn how to drive in a Formula 1 car. It really doesn't improve your driving. So whilst of course it's true that if you have a good solid instrument to learn on, that'll help. It's an important thing. But you can't overcome bad, not to say bad, but beginner technique, just inexperienced technique, by buying a lot of gadgets and buying the latest mouthpiece and all that sort of stuff. So I would say that it's really a waste of time. I also say this in my other video, like, how to select a saxophone, what to look for. Like, you have to play on, just an average, solid student instrument for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and really practice it to get to a point where you can really appreciate the differences and where you can actually put a different mouthpiece on your saxophone and feel what it does to your own playing and how the sound changes. Because for a beginner, it all kind of sounds alike. You can't really feel the differences. You just don't have the skill yet to be able to judge these things. So that's really my number 5, is don't get too into all the different possibilities for mouthpieces and reeds and all this type of different stuff. Just let that go. Which brings us to number 6, and that's staying in one music genre. And I guess this kind of akin to the playing alone for too long tip at number 4. For some reason, and this is mostly something that happens to people that are following, that have like a classical style teacher at home, or who go to an actual, physical teacher, is that they have some method books. And most of those things focus either only on jazz or mostly on classical, and sure, there'll be a few, little bebop lines or a blues song here and there. But still, in general, people will go in the direction of one genre, and especially once you start to get good at playing a bit jazzy or playing hip-hoppy or playing, classically, people tend to stay in that, and they tend to, once you get good at something, it makes sense to keep doing that. And it's logical, but it's actually way better to really push yourself in the other directions as well. There are a lot of myths going around in the musical world where people say, oh, classical people can't play jazz, and jazz people can't play classical, and classical people can't play soul saxophone or things like that. And for my mind, all of that is really absolute bullshit. Some of the greatest saxophone players and trumpet players and piano players jazz players have played incredible classical concerts and vice versa. It's just not true. What is true is that many classical people never play any jazz and haven't practiced it at all. So yeah, they're bad at it because they haven't practiced it. And the same goes for many jazz players. They've never practiced anything classical, so that's why they're bad at it. And this is something that begins at the beginning, because right from the start we tend to focus on what we like, and then we get a little bit good at that, and then we stay moving in that direction while neglecting all those other things. And trust me, you'll be a much more rounded and much more better playing, and you'll develop much faster if you very consciously push yourself to not just play jazz, not just pop, not just classical, but keep mixing it up. Number 7, and that actually has little to do with the saxophone, it has to do with playing piano. That kind of tells me that this transition between these two notes, that's really the main focus of what is happening here musically. Most beginners don't learn any piano, and that will hold you back immensely. Now that might sound a bit strange. You're trying to learn saxophone, why should I learn piano? Well, if you've seen some of my other videos, I mention this often, and it has to do with music theory. The piano is really one of the very few instruments that lies out all the notes in the 12-note system that we as Europeans use. You know, all the instruments work with the 12-note system. If you don't know what that is, you can watch this video here to find out how that works and what that is. But the piano is the one instrument where you can see all of that. And now I'm not saying that you need to learn to play piano, sonnets and Mozart and Bach and all that sort of stuff, but to have just a little bit of experience with playing the piano, getting maybe 5 lessons with a piano teacher or following some online courses, and just getting the basics down of playing some chords on the piano, being able to play a little harmony on the piano, which really isn't that difficult to do. In a few hours you can learn that, and that'll help you immensely later on, because as soon as you start getting into music theory, which is something that you have to get into if you want to start improvising, if you want to be able to solo really good, it's just essential to learn this. And it can be difficult, but if you play just a little piano, that'll make it a ton easier to do. Number 8, not knowing your intervals. Half a step between 2 notes, always, no matter where you play it, no matter what key, no matter where on the keyboard, sounds like danger is coming. So it sounds like this. Now you probably see my interval secret series. They're both freely available on YouTube here. If you haven't seen those, definitely check those out. And here's the reason why. If you don't know your intervals by head, you can recognize them by ear, it'll make music theory way harder. And it's actually super simple to learn the intervals, to you use the interval secret movies that I made. It's a very simple trick that you can learn in just 2 hours of practicing with this, maybe a week of a few short practices, and you will then never forget this, and it will open up the whole world of music theory for you. I know so many people who struggle with music theory who come to me, and once I explain this to them, it's like that whole world, that whole bag of snakes just straightens out, and it gets way easier. I cannot emphasize how important this is. So I will say nothing more about it. Just know that if you don't know your intervals by ear, by heart, it'll hold you back immensely, and this is something that's very easy to learn. And that brings us to almost the last point in this series, number 9, and that is play more freely. Most beginners don't play freely enough. And well, the result of that is this. You wouldn't believe how many very advanced players, people who've played 5 to 10 years I've met, who can play Charlie Parker solos right off the sheet, extremely well. But when you say to them, now play freely, or just play free form with other people, they completely freeze up. They can't do it. And it's because even though they can play off the sheet anything, they're not in sync with their instrument. And what I mean by that is this. If I sing a note, say and I say to you, now sing that same note, pretty much 95% of all people, unless you're really amusical, can sing that same note right away, very easily. You don't have to look for it on your voice box, you just grab the right one. It's very easy. When you remember a melody from a TV show or from a song that you like, you can just whistle that melody or sing that melody, like pa pa da pa, whatever the melody happens to be, and you don't have to search for the notes, because your mind and your voice box are completely in sync. You've learned that from being a kid when you didn't quite control everything so well yet, to now having lots and lots of years. If you're 20, 25, 30, you've got 20, 25 years of using your voice every day. So we're completely in sync with our voice box. Now what I would advise you to do is also get to a point where you're as much in sync with your saxophone as possible. And the only way to do that is to treat it as a body extension, as something that you use all the time, that you can really get in sync with. And the exercise that I want to give you for that is this. Imagine a line in your head, a melody, ba-ba-dum-bum, or whatever it happens to be. And then, after you've imagined it, try to play it on the saxophone in one time, without making mistakes. And when you do it and you make a mistake, really think about it and say, okay, what did I do wrong? Find it the right way, play it right a few times, sing it in your mind, play it right, and then move on to another melody and repeat it again. And what you do with this exercise is you actually bring your mind in sync with your instrument, so that at some point you'll get to a point where if you hear something, a melody on the radio or whatever, you can just grab your saxophone and immediately play it on your instrument, because you're in sync with your instrument, and you need to do that. No reading off the page, no no freestyling, as in just doing whatever, but really consciously thinking, now I'm going to sing this and then do it, and creating this in syncness, if you will, with your instrument. And that brings us to number 10, the last one in this list, and that's not taking control of your own learning.
And you will be rewarded. Fail to do so, and the consequences may be severe.
Especially when you're working with a classical teacher that's like, helping you move along day to day, people tend to get into the, I'm just gonna sit back and I'm just gonna do whatever my teacher tells me to do. And of course it's fine, but you slow down your own learning a lot, because only you know what will challenge you the most. Only you can push yourself to find the thing you need to evolve further and to break out of where you are now and move to where you want to go. So I think that this is a hard point to really get the details over to you clearly, but take control of your own learning curve. Because if you let other people tell you how to learn, on average it will take 4 to 6 years to get to, an average, to the average point of playing, kind of averagely on the saxophone. But I've seen many people get there in a year, year and a half, 2 years, who you would look at and most people would say, oh, they've probably been playing for 5-6 years. But no, they've been playing for a year, 2 years, but they've been practicing really hard, they've been pushing themselves, and there's a lot of different things that I could point to as a teacher and say, well, this is the reason why they've evolved so fast. But the most important thing is that those people that learn really fast take control of their own. They're not satisfied with people saying, oh, this is what you should do now for this month. Oh no, you should focus on this right now. Of course, it's great to have other people push you and tell you what you can work on, and you want to take all that in and you want to work on all that stuff. But you really want to keep control of your learning curve personally and say, you know what, by then I want to be there. And if you want to say to yourself, in a year or 2 years, I want to be able to walk into any cafe and just have 10 songs in my mind and in my fingers that I really master and that I really control, and I can just sit in with the band and have fun, and I want to be able to do that in 2 years time. I believe that that's a goal that absolutely is manageable, but in order to get there you'll really have to push yourself, and you'll have to do things where maybe other people will tell you, you can't quite do that yet, and I think you're pushing it too hard a little bit. Well, let me tell you something. Everybody and anybody who ever got anywhere fast is doing that all the time. All the people that are really progressing fast are saying, well, too bad that you don't like it, but I want to do this and I am just going to do it. And that's really the attitude that you need. Take control of your own learning curve and don't sit back too much. Really go for it. So that's my number 10 tip. Take control of your own learning curve. So that's my 10 points that I think if you take them all into account and work on all of them, it'll really speed up your time for learning and mastering the saxophone. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this lesson. For more lessons, of course, check my site hellosaxophone.com or my YouTube channel here. There's many videos that you can watch. Of course, for many of the parts that I've been talking about in this video, I've made specialized programs for developing tone or improvising, or as I mentioned, the videos for learning the intervals. So check all those out. I really hope you like them. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you can get all my new videos whenever I post them, and I hope to see you in the next lesson here on hellosaxophone.com. Ciao!